He should step aside and let someone else lead. You can't keep ruling us by force forever. Let someone else prove what they can do.
It didn't start with a grand speech echoing through the halls of Parliament, nor with the thunderous clash of a military coup shaking the capital. No tanks rolled through the streets, no declarations boomed from the radio. It started with a single oath, a hushed promise, a clandestine agreement made in the shadows. Sworn behind closed doors, away from prying eyes, as Togo innocently slept, unaware of the seismic shift about to occur in its political landscape. The fate of a nation hanging in the balance, decided in the dead of night. This was not a revolution heralded by fanfare and public outcry, no storming of the Bastille, no iconic moment captured in history books, but a quiet, insidious theft of power, meticulously planned and executed in absolute silence, a silent coup against the very principles of democracy. On June 24, 2025, as Lomé's vibrant streets buzzed with the rhythm of normal life, the markets overflowing with goods, the people going about their daily routines, oblivious to the machinations unfolding in the corridors of power, the very foundation of the Togolese state, the constitution itself, was being subtly, yet irrevocably, rewritten, its principles twisted and contorted to serve a singular purpose. Not by the collective will of the people, expressed through free and fair elections, but by the calculated ambition of one man, Faure Gnassingbé, and his carefully selected inner circle of loyalists and advisors. Faure Gnassingbé, after already consolidating 2 decades in power, a reign marked by both progress and persistent questions of legitimacy, was not simply securing another term within the established framework. He was fundamentally transforming the nature of his presidency, elevating it into something permanent, seemingly untouchable, and strategically positioned above the inconvenient reach of future elections. The newly created title, President of the Council of Ministers, sounded deceptively mundane, almost bureaucratic in its simplicity, but it was, in reality, a masterstroke of political maneuvering, a strategically crafted position seemingly immune to the vagaries of the ballot box, wielding real, substantial power discreetly hidden behind the facade of a ceremonial presidency, a puppet leader dancing to Gnassingbé's tune. The oath taken was not a solemn vow of service to the nation and its people, but a pledge of unwavering loyalty to the dynasty, effectively ensuring that its iron grip on power would extend far beyond the natural horizon of a single lifetime. As the unsuspecting city gradually awoke, stretching and yawning into a new day, the well-oiled machinery of distraction smoothly spun into action, diverting attention and subtly shaping the narrative. News of exhilarating football victories, painting the nation in hues of pride and unity, dominated the headlines, and gleaming reports of ambitious infrastructure projects, promising progress and prosperity, filled the airwaves, carefully obscuring the truth. But secrets of this magnitude, no matter how carefully guarded, can never truly stay buried forever. The silent oath, whispered in the darkness, would soon ignite and spark the loudest, most resounding roar of defiance in a generation, a cry for freedom and justice that would shake the very foundations of the new order. The carefully constructed silence, the fragile peace built on deception, was about to be irrevocably broken, shattered by the unwavering will of the people. To truly grasp the sheer audacity of that June oath, a moment that seemed to defy the very principles of democracy, we must first delve into Togo's past. This isn't a story of a nation steadily progressing towards democracy, embracing freedom and open governance. Instead, it's a narrative deeply rooted in dynastic rule, where power has been concentrated within a single family for decades. It all began with Gnassingbé Dynasty, a military figure who forcefully seized power in 1967, ushering in an era of authoritarian control. He ruled Togo with an iron fist for 38 long years, systematically crushing any form of dissent, silencing opposition voices, and meticulously building a cult of personality around himself. His image was everywhere, his word was law. His reign was largely defined by an atmosphere of pervasive fear and enforced silence, with political opposition either exiled from the country or brutally crushed through imprisonment and persecution. Elections became nothing more than a theatrical performance, carefully staged to legitimize his continued rule. devoid of any genuine democratic process. When Eyadema finally died in 2005, the constitution was swiftly and opportunistically rewritten overnight in a blatant power grab. This paved the way to install his son, Faure, as the new leader, a move that ignited widespread and deadly protests across the nation. Faure, in an attempt to appease the public, promised reform and a new era of governance. But beneath the modern veneer of progress, the fundamental machinery of control, the deep-seated structures of power, remained largely untouched and unchanged. For 2 decades, he strategically allowed a token opposition to exist, creating a facade of democracy. But the true levers of power, the real decision-making authority, never truly left the firm grip of the Gnassingbé family. For the young people of Togo, this so-called stability felt less like security and more like a suffocating blanket, stifling their aspirations and dreams. It was a dynasty that had simply traded military uniforms for tailored suits, adapting to the times but never genuinely loosening its grip on power. Now, a new generation of Togolese citizens, a generation with nothing left to lose and everything to gain, was finally ready to rise up and challenge the long-imposed silence, demanding a different future for their nation. The title, President of the Council of Ministers, was political sleight of hand, harmless in name, absolute in power. Created through a secretive constitutional amendment, it made Faure head of government for life, answerable to no one. The presidency became a hollow shell. Real authority shifted to Faure's new office, above elections and beyond accountability. The National Assembly, already a rubber stamp, was sidelined entirely. This was a power grab by legal fine print, not force, a move designed to make resistance seem futile. The oath on June 24th was the dynasty's declaration. Togo's future was now a family estate. But the silence of that night masked a political earthquake. The people's permission was no longer required, or so the regime thought. The path to the Midnight Presidency was paved with calculated distractions and the slow suffocation of dissent. Electoral laws were quietly changed, opposition strongholds redrawn out of relevance, and Parliament became a loyal echo chamber. State media flooded the airwaves with sports, festivals, and infrastructure, anything but politics. Meanwhile, opposition leaders faced sudden legal troubles, and civil society groups were strangled by bureaucracy. The final move. The constitutional amendment passed late on a Friday, unannounced, just before a holiday. The oath-taking was secret, the details vague, a silent coup, complete before the nation could react. The architects believed they'd thought of everything, but they hadn't counted on social media. The illusion of control was about to shatter. The wall of silence was breached by a single anonymous post, a grainy photo of an internal memo leaked by a conscience-stricken clerk. Shared on WhatsApp, then Twitter, it landed with Le Réveil Togolais, a collective of young activists. They moved fast, translating legal jargon into viral infographics. President for life. Hashtags like Togo Monarchy Non exploded across West Africa. The government's denials were drowned out by a digital tidal wave. Within hours, the story leapt from screens to streets. WhatsApp groups became command centers, designating meeting points and rallying cries. They stole our future in the dark. We'll take it back in the light. For a generation raised online, this was their battlefield. The secret was out, and the streets were about to answer. The fire had been lit. The protests began as scattered gatherings near Lomé's University, but quickly swelled into a tidal wave. Chants of "voleurs" and "we don't want a king" echoed as banners demanded an end to 58 years of dynasty. Barricades rose, fires burned for light and warmth, and the air filled with the scent of defiance. Security forces responded with tear gas, but the youth regrouped, using tactics learned from global protests. Water bottles, traffic cones, and lookouts became their tools. Encrypted chats their lifeline. Each crackdown only fueled their resolve. A young woman led chants atop a barricade. Human chains blocked police lines. The sound was a symphony of resistance, a generation refusing to be silenced. The dynasty wanted quiet, but the streets gave them fire. The uprising was unstoppable. At the heart of the uprising was a radical message, a fundamental challenge to the established order. It wasn't just about tweaking the system, it was about dismantling it entirely. This was not about reform, about incremental changes at the margins, but about ending political inheritance itself. They rejected the very notion of power being passed down like property. Banners mocked Faure's crown, ridiculing the idea of a hereditary presidency. Chants declared, "Togo is not a kingdom." The people's voices rose in unison, demanding an end to the dynastic rule. Connected to the world through the digital realm, Togolese youth saw their plight as an absurd relic, an outdated system in a modern Africa striving for progress and equality. They were acutely aware of the democratic norms in other nations. Unlike their parents, who may have been willing to compromise and bargain for fairer elections, they wanted a system, a complete overhaul, where any citizen, regardless of their family name or background, could lead. They envisioned a meritocracy, not a monarchy. Street committees and encrypted chats became laboratories, testing grounds for real democracy, debate, merit, transparency. Their vision was a new constitution, written not by the elite, but by the people, for the people. The regime, stuck in the past and clinging to power, saw only agitators and troublemakers. They missed the deep-seated homegrown hunger for dignity and self-determination. Every act of repression, every crackdown on dissent only proved the protesters' point, reinforcing their conviction that the regime ruled by force, not by the consent of the governed. A generation was demanding democracy, genuine self-governance, and would not settle, would never settle, for a crown, for the perpetuation of dynastic rule. The fires in Lomé sparked a wave across Africa. In Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Uganda, youth watched, inspired and emboldened. Hashtags multiplied, Togo monarchy non, Baya must go, free Uganda. The illusion of permanence was shattered. Even the most entrenched rulers felt the tremor. Regimes responded with silence and crackdowns, fearing the virus of hope. Activists across the continent shared tactics and solidarity, framing Togo's struggle as a frontline in Africa's fight for democracy. The youth of Lomé were no longer just fighting for themselves. They carried the hopes of millions. The desire for freedom was contagious, and the old guard was terrified. By July, the movement had evolved. Chaos gave way to strategy. Activists called for a general strike, paralyzing the economy and demanding dissolve the council, resign Faure, and draft a new constitution. The regime grew desperate. Raids, arrests, internet blackouts. But the movement only grew. Regional solidarity surged. African intellectuals and artists spoke out, and ECOWAS faced mounting pressure. The fate of Togo was now a continental question. The fear was gone. The illusion of permanence shattered. The youth had tasted their own power and would not forget it. A dynasty built on silence now faced a nation that refused to be quiet. This is Insight Africa, where power is borrowed, but the people always come to collect. This is Insight Africa.